In this episode of Sasquatch Theory, I'm joined by Randy, a man whose encounters stretch across decades and multiple states. His story begins in the 1970s while hunting near Van Buren, Missouri, in the Mark Twain National Forest. One morning, Randy heard a powerful wood knock followed by a roar that echoed through the timber. A year later, he found a massive track in the same area and saw a large figure moving through the thickets, leaving him with questions that have never faded. As Randy moved from Missouri to Mississippi over the years, the encounters followed him. Strange vocalizations, spook wildlife, missing food, and rocks being left on his vehicle. In Bowling Green, Missouri, right in MOMO territory, he witnessed a massive creature on all fours cross a hayfield and crouch behind a hay bale, watching him with intent. Later, he experienced an overwhelming and oppressive presence that delivered a chilling message in his mind. You're not welcome here. You're going to die. Randy's encounters even connected back to his own family. His father, before passing, revealed that he once saw a huge wolf-like creature near the St. Francis River, a beast that stood upright and watched him with intelligence. Tonight, Randy shares a lifetime of encounters involving Sasquatch, Dogman, the MOMO, and the unsettling structures and signs left behind in the deep woods. These stories don't just describe sightings. They reveal patterns that stretch across generations. Settle in and join us as we dive into Randy's extraordinary journey into the unknown. Like the video and subscribe to the channel, and if you have your own Bigfoot encounter you would like to share with me, feel free to reach out sometime at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. With all that being said, let's dive straight into Randy's Bigfoot encounters here on Sasquatch Theory. All right, Randy, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well and hope you're doing the same.
Yeah, I am doing excellent. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Randy, if you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, where your experiences took place at, and if you can, guide me through each encounter, one after another.
Okay. I've kind of been collecting all these thoughts together over a period of probably 40 some years. And, I grew up in the era of Bigfoot coming to fruition, I guess you might say. My experience starts with the Patterson-Gimlin film, which actually a documentary came to my town somewhere around 1968, 69. And I saw that and I thought, man, this is something else. I'm a guy from Southeast Missouri, farmland and all of this. And all of a sudden it looks like the world has something bigger than what I ever imagined. It was really funny because I told my dad about it. He said, you know what? There's some things out there that we don't understand. So that really kind of got me rolling. But then, you have influences of predominant thought. And that, everything that I heard was against the existence of Bigfoot or Sasquatch. So that is where the beginning was. To zip ahead a little bit, I lived in farming country. Everything in the Missouri Boot Heel is flat. The trees are not abundant. And I was not a deer hunter until some friends of mine said, "Man, come on deer hunting with us." We hunt around Van Buren and Mark Twain Forest, and why don't you come with us? And so I got everything together, and we hunted west of Van Buren and near the Eastwood community. And it was pretty exciting for me. I was in the big woods and all these things, and there were tree stands that people had built. Nobody wanted to claim them because they were illegal. So it was kind of like a first come, first serve if you found one. So I picked out one that had been constructed fairly recently, and it was overlooking a pond that the Forest Service had built. They built a number of ponds back in the early 70s. This would have been probably somewhere around 72, 73. And I got up in the stand, and immediately I heard a knock. And I thought, who is going to be out here chopping wood, you know? And then I heard another one and a couple of others. And it seemed like they were in different places. And I thought, okay, somebody's chopping wood. So the longer I sat there, the more I began to wonder if I was going to see anything that day. Then I was kind of startled by something. It sounded like somebody was yelling off in the distance. And I thought, well, I don't think there are all that many people around here. In fact, there was only one little patch of private land, and belonged to the Partney family. And they had everything really signed off, and no trespassing and all this. So we knew not to shoot in that direction or whatever. Anyway, this was in the opposite direction, and I heard it off in the distance, and it was like a kind of sound. And I thought, well, this is kind of crazy. But that was my first experience. The next year, I picked out the same tree stand and got in it. And when I was scouting that year, I looked around the pond, as I always did. There were some odd tracks. I mean, it was like large feet that had buried up in the mud. It was a real wet year. And there were some deer tracks, but there were these tracks, and it was really odd because I looked where the mud was really stirred up, and I saw what appeared to be like somebody had stuck a deer rack in the mud. There were these holes. To count them, there were 10. I thought, well, if that's a 10 point, but what deer falls down that way? And looking back on it, I think it was a man or someone or something that had actually gone down with hands into the mud. So later on during deer season, I was there. And I saw movement off to across the pond, which was in an area where the ground really drops off. And I saw what I thought was a hunter moving through a thicket right at the edge of a thicket. And it appeared like he had a head net on, like what we would use in bow season. Well, he was moving, and I thought, this guy doesn't move at all when he walks. And I thought, well, I'll see him when he comes out, because the logging road that I was on, it got really thick in that area, and so he would have to come out to the road. Well, he never did, and so I let that pass. And I asked the guys later, I said, any of you guys down where I was hunting? Oh, no, we want to stay away from you. You don't want to get in the way. Well, you file those things away, and you don't think about what everybody says doesn't exist. So as time goes along, I moved from Dunklin County up to Wayne County, which is the Greenville area, Piedmont area. And being an avid hunter, that was just right for me. The St. Francis River was it is a 10-minute walk behind my house, and it's one of those things that there was a shoal there. I could cross the river because the river's pretty narrow up in that area. And I could walk across on the shoal with boots on and hunt on the other side and such as that. Not far from where I crossed, there was a huge tree down. And this thing was close to 4 feet in diameter. And I thought, what a natural deer stand. And I was able to get up on it, walked over, and sat down, and the sun was starting to come up, and I got a really eerie feeling, kind of like the little kid in the dark feels like somebody's behind him. And I sat there for a while and didn't see anything, and I thought, it's just really time to get out of here. So I went on and found another place to hunt. But it was, I think it was probably one season later, I went into that same area, and I found a place when I was scouting to sit on an outcropping of rocks. And so I picked that out for the opening morning. Well, as I sat there, the sun was coming up, and I didn't realize it, but there were turkeys that had roosted all in a tree behind me. And turkeys are really funny because when they start waking up, they're kind of like little goony birds up there. But I was sitting there, and I kept looking over my shoulder, and I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to watch for deer for looking at these crazy turkeys. And then all of a sudden, I heard something, and I thought, that's not really a turkey sound. I never heard turkey do that. But it was in behind me and in the direction of the turkeys. But it was kind of a bloop, bloop, and the turkeys were not coming off the roost, and it was time for them to be flying down. But they were sticking right where they were, and the sun got up. It was pretty bright. It was good daylight. And they were not flying down from the roost. Then it suddenly they all took off, flew over my head, across the river into a field across the way. And so later on, I asked a buddy of mine up there, and I said, "Have you ever heard a turkey make a bloop sound?" He said, "No." And he looked at me like, "What's wrong with you?" But still, I'm operating in this framework of okay, everything is what we see, and if we don't see Bigfoot doesn't exist, and all of this. So anyway, we keep going there, and then another guy who worked in an agricultural lime pit. I saw him. Probably about a year later, he said, we got bears in this area. He had some little Polaroid pictures, and I'd never seen a bear track. And he said, "Here, look at this." And so when I looked at it, I said, "Oh, these are some pretty big tracks." He had tracks that appeared to be a hindfoot, and he had a 12-inch ruler laying on the inside. It probably would have been about 14 inches. And then he said, I got some front feet here too. And front foot tracks. And so I looked at that, and I said, "Where were these?" He said, "Well, they're beside the others." I said, this bear must be drunk. He's walking sideways. And he said, well, he said, where these were, there weren't any others behind them. And where these were, there weren't any others in front of them. And I said, well, it looks like two walking on their hind legs together. And so, here we are again. We have things that are put in front of us, and every teaching and all of the influences are that these things are just phenomenon, and Sasquatch does not exist. And so, I just kept going along and writing all these things off and explaining them away. Then we zip into the 80s. I moved again to Bowling Green, Missouri, in Pike County, and it was that was like a totally different area. We had different people talking about MOMO and the Missouri Monster, and when I talked to some people, they said, "Wow, that's just a stunt because they have MOMO days in Louisiana, Missouri, which is about 10 miles from Bowling Green." And that's just a way to have special sales and all of this stuff and make a little more money. And so they were throwing that out there. Then there were some old salts from around there who said, "Well, you never know." And one guy said, "I think I saw Momo one time." And I thought, okay. But it was another one of those things I just kind of stuck in the file in the back of my mind. And I was working as a family counselor in that area. And, I always referred to the thing, "Hey, I've got a master's degree." I'm not one of those people who thinks they see things and all of this. I just counted it all as myth and let it go. I guess really you get into the habit of denying reality, and I was counseling people, trying to get them to accept reality and see reality for what it was. And still, I didn't want to do the same thing. So I was a deer hunter in those days. I hunted at Raniker wildlife area. And then my neighbor, Alan, said, "Hey, my uncle has 120 acres. You want to hunt in there?" He said, "That's where I hunt." And I said, "Sure." I was going to be there about totally, it would be about 4 years. So I hunted most of that time there. And Alan and I tried not to hunt at the same time because it was a little close to hunt and shoot. So anyway, he had full permission for me to be there. And there was one large hayfield. There were some draws and saddles in the area. It was one part was really hilly. There was a little pond there, but there was a lot of thick growth around the backside of the property. Plus, there was a thicket where we drove in and parked. There was an old abandoned house there, and there was a cut bank that we had to go down to be able to walk through the thicket. And so there was thicket on both sides, and we could go down, then make a turn, and there was a tree stand that was built back there. The hayfield was probably about 60, 70 yards from that tree stand. and the deer like to come up and be shielded by the thicket, and they'd pass where the tree stand was. And I think it was the second year I hunted in there. I'd gotten out to the tree stand, and there was a long line of rolled hay bales, and everybody's, I'm sure, has seen them out in the fields. They're about 5 feet tall. They lay on their side, and so these were all lined up so they could be loaded whenever they were needed. And I saw movement in the thick growth on the other side of the hayfield. And so as I watched it, it still wasn't really light, and I could tell it was something on all fours. And so as I watched it, it came up behind the hay bales and turned, and I could see just the top of its back. And I thought, hey, this isn't a deer. This is more elk size or something like that. And so it moved along until it got to the end bale, stopped, and it was like it crouched down behind the bale. And I sat there, and I wanted to see what this was, if it was going to pass from behind the hay bale. Well, I watched, and suddenly here came what I perceived to be a head looking out, and I thought it was like the nose of an elk-sized animal or something. That was it poked its head out, no antlers, and I thought, well, that's really, really kind of crazy. Then it drew it back in, and all of a sudden, just probably a couple of feet below that, it poked out again, and I thought, well, this is kind of crazy. And then as it drew it back again, I didn't see it anymore. So I just continued to sit there. Didn't see any deer, no activity at all anywhere. So here we go. That goes in the file in the back of my mind, and it was really a puzzle. But the hunting day was over, and I went back several times, never saw it again. And I always wanted to see what that was on the other side of the hay bales. Well, never again. So it was my practice whenever I was going hunting there in the mornings. I'd usually get up about 3:30 and get everything going, because it was a fair drive from my house, and I wanted to get there before the sun came up. So I'd just fry a couple of eggs, make egg sandwiches, and that was my breakfast and my break time. And I'd usually hunt till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, something like that. Well, generally, I had a little bit of a sandwich left. I just pitch it out out the window of the car, and then I'd get everything together and go back and hunt. I bow hunted, and I also gun hunted. So I was there from the 1st of October to the end of the year, at least a couple of times a week. Well, when I'd come back to the car, most of the time that little bit of sandwich would be gone. So I thought that was I was feeding the raccoon community pretty well. One day I came back from hunting, and I'd stayed a little longer. It was probably 2:30, 3 o'clock, and I I noticed that it was gone, and I saw something on the fender or hood of my car. I drove a little Pinto wagon, so it was kind of obscure in that brush. And I walked over, and here was a rock uh, up on the hood of my car, and I picked it up, looked at it. It was chert or flint, but it was white, and it had uh, some jasper, red jasper veins in it. I thought, that's a cute rock. Alan must be out here, and he just let me know that he's here. So I stuck it in my pocket, and it was probably 3.5, 4 inches in diameter, flat. And if you know how chert is, it chips up, and it's what they made arrowheads out of a lot in Missouri. In fact, I think there's a chert variety that's the state rock of Missouri. But anyway, I stuck it in my pocket, got in the car, and went home, set it up on a shelf, and I saw Alan in a couple of days, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing? Put a rock on my car?" Kidding him. And he said, "I didn't put a rock on your car." He said, "I haven't been in your backyard." I said, "No, this was out at your uncle's place." He said, "Oh, I hadn't been out there in 2 weeks." And I thought, "Oh, okay." So I kept the rock. I've lost it in these 40 years since then. But anyway, these things come and they go, and that goes in the file in my brain, and we have all of this that plays out. So anyway, along as we go along, and I think this was probably the next bow season that I went back to that hunting spot, just like I'd been doing. And I got there way before daylight, and I thought, well, I'll sit in the car for just a little bit. And all of a sudden, I got this horrible sense of foreboding. And I mean, it was a very oppressive feeling. And suddenly, and the hair standing up on my arms right now, because it was a voice in my mind, and I've called it an intuitive conversation. I hear people talk about mind speak, and I'm sure this is very much the same thing. But it says, "You're not welcome here." And I thought, okay, this is going over the line here. And then almost immediately it says, "You need to leave now." Or it said, "Leave now." And I thought, if I leave, I'm never going to hunt again. This is drawing the line, and I've got to stay here. And then in a few seconds, it says, "You need to go." And I said, "No, I'm a little on the stubborn side." And then it was the expression of what was in my mind changed with each one of these things. It got stronger. And then after a pause, it was so impressive, saying, "You're going to die." And I said, if I don't get out of this car, I'm never going to have the guts to hunt again. So I got out, I opened the hatch of the little station wagon. I took the bow out, set it on top. And I don't know if I'm sure that you experience the same kind of thing when someone stands behind you and you don't see them, but you just know they're there. This was like it was almost touching. And, you know, you talk about your oh crap moment. Here's an oh crap moment. I don't think I had the strength to run. So I thought, well, I'm just going to go ahead. I reached up, closed the hatch, and put my hand on my bow and wheeled around. Nothing was there. It was, you know, it was just that strong, I believe, oppressive feeling. But I thought, okay, maybe this is over. So I turned around, started the walk down the little clearing road. It wasn't even a gravel road; it was just a dirt road. Went down through that cut bank, and it was like the thicket on my left came alive. I've never experienced anything like it. It was just as though, you know, it's you take the old movies where hands are reaching out of the darkness, you know, and such a thing. It wasn't that, but it was that same kind of feeling. And I got about halfway down, and my feet wanted to turn around and go the other way. But I walked on, I gritted my teeth, and I said, Lord, if you've ever walked by me, you need to be walking by me right now. I got down to the bottom, turned, went to the tree stand, climbed up in the tree stand, and all of that stopped. It was like there was no more opposition. I sat there and I said, this has got to be some kind of demonic thing. And I was still denying the fact because I'd never heard anything about mind speak. I'd never heard all of the things that we hear today. This was 1983, 84. So it was everything was just full of ignorance, I guess you might say. In those days, MOMO was a hairy guy, you know, that appeared in people's yards, and that's all that anybody ever said. So anyway, that was the last time I still hunted. I never saw anything else. I never experienced anything. And there was deer movement after that. But it was so funny. Anytime there was any of this other going on, I never saw a deer all day long. Well, if we go from that time to one of my moves after that was to the state of Mississippi, and I moved into Lincoln County, Mississippi. It's really funny. In Missouri, there's Pike County and Lincoln County, up Highway 61 from St. Louis. And there in Mississippi, there's also Pike and Lincoln County that adjoin. I moved to Lincoln County this time, and it was almost immediately I started hearing people talking about animal mutilation that had been going on. It started with goats and moved into calves and such as that. So, I thought, well, that sounds like the occult, maybe, or some kind of cults that are trying to gear up or whatever. And so I continued to be a counselor and worked some with the state of Mississippi. And so as we went along in that regard, I started to feel a little more comfortable with doing some deer hunting there and such as that. And I became acquainted with another guy named Alan, and Alan and I hunted together quite a bit. Well, he had told me of an area that bordered on the Homachita National Forest, which would have been in Lincoln and Pike County, and so we had to cross private land to get to this area, and he got all the permission for that. And, we had to cross one place where a fellow lived, and this guy had 12 kids, and so we had to make friends with all the kids when we went in and all of that. But with 12 kids, he had a lot of toys strewn around in the yard, such as that. So we began to pick out places to hunt, such as that. So anyway, Alan called me one day and he said, I went hunting yesterday, and he said, there's the weirdest thing. He said, it's on a hillside. And next time you go out, he told me how to get there through the woods. And he said, next time, take a look at that. He said, I think we've got some homeless people maybe that are living in there or something. So I went in a couple of days and I walked up there. And you have to remember, I'm still not a believer. I'm not putting two to two together like most human beings. I just kind of kept everything going, and all of these things are happenstances. I was a victim of, I guess, drinking the Kool-Aid of doubt or something. So I go in there and I'm looking around, looking for deer signs such as this. And I walked up on the hillside that he was talking about. And when I got there, it was really odd, because here was what appeared to be almost a perfect circle on the side of this hill, rocks. And poles that were not cut, they were broken, that were leaning up in like a teepee shape. And there was some brush on top, but they weren't around the entire circle. It was like half or maybe a little more. And some had been knocked down. They were laying on the ground and such as that. But there was enough still standing that I could see how they were put together. They were stacked against a tree in the center, and there was a part of a little tree or a limb or something that was stuck in a fork. And they were leaned against it. And I thought, well, somebody just built them a clubhouse, I think is what it is, because there were no signs of any cooking or anything like that. But what I was seeing was that the poles were arranged on the north side, and downhill and to this really would have probably been the southwest was built open. And so I walked up, went inside that circle and began to look around, and here were rocks and trinkets, I would say, and even a couple of the toys that could have come from the fellow's yard who had all the kids. And I thought, well, there's somebody that's either from that house playing, or somebody maybe has just stolen something and put it in there. But I saw cans with colorful labels, just like probably 2 or 3 of them. but these were arranged around where the rocks were. And so I told Alan, I said, I looked at that. Isn't that weird? He said, yeah. And I also noticed that there were trees, small trees that were broken. I don't think I said anything about it, but when I was in Mark Twain Forest near Van Buren, I saw trees that were broken. I'm 6 feet tall, and they were at least head high where the breaks were. And they were up, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches in diameter, I guess. And it was the same way there in Mississippi. And it was like they didn't have any regular pattern to them that I could see. But it seems like as time went along, there was more and more evidence that was being thrown in my direction, and I just wouldn't pull anything together on it. So anyway, I had a young guy who had lost his dad, and I used to take him hunting and fishing and such as that. And we went into the Homachita Forest, and somebody had put up a tree stand. So I got out of the truck, and Jamie said, I'm going to go over here to the right. And he said, it's kind of easy walking. I said, okay, I'm going to get in the old tree stand down here. And so I went down and got into the tree stand, and the squirrels were all over, and they were making noise and all kinds of things. And I thought, well, either it's going to hide my noise from the deer, or it's going to keep the deer stirred up and they're not going to come around. But I was bound and determined to stay until it was almost dark, and then go back to the truck. I knew Jamie would be coming back to the truck too. So anyway, it came to that. And as it was really starting to get dark, the sun was going down, I saw movement this was a pretty flat area, and there was a thicket, probably, again, about 70 yards from where I was. And I saw someone walking in the thicket, and I thought, well, Jamie, what are you doing in there? And instead of walking on the outside, at the outside of the thicket, this guy was walking probably 5-6 feet inside the thicket. And I looked, and there were a couple of distinctive things. I thought, he's got the strangest hat on I ever saw for a hunter. And then I thought of the guy that I saw that had the head net on, and I thought, well, maybe that's what it is. But the other thing was to be walking through a thicket. His head and shoulders weren't really moving. It was almost like that part of his body was just gliding along. He went up and turned before he got to the road and went on. And I thought, well, if that's Jamie, how did he get there? And why is he walking away from the truck? Because the truck was straight up from where I was. So anyway, I got down from the stand, and I thought, well, maybe I better go in case he's getting lost. And I got up there. Here stands Jamie beside the truck. And I said, what were you doing down by my stand? He said, I've been off the other side. He said, I didn't move at all. Well, we got in the truck and drove out the gravel road, and there was no vehicle. Until we got to the main road, we saw nothing. And here we go with another puzzle. And it's just one of those things that you think, how in the world am I going to fit this in? But anyway, looking back on all of my life, I think that there were realities there that were presented to me, and the fact that I was following a mindset, I did not recognize them. I was talking to my wife yesterday about when I was a little guy. We'd have dinner with my grandparents, who they just lived around the corner, and my grandpa and my dad would sit on the front porch and talk about all sorts of things from the past. And I was a little guy, and little guy running around barefoot. And I knew not to get out in the yard because somebody invariably had thrown a cigarette out there somewhere, and I was going to step on it, and I didn't want that. So I just sat there and listened to them. Didn't say very much. And my grandpa was talking about different things when he was a boy in Arkansas. From where that porch was to Arkansas was only about 13, 14 miles. And he grew up in Nimmons, Arkansas, or was born in grew into an older boy there. And it's right on where it was right on the St. Francis River. And he talked about different things. He and my grandma were always funny. I'd say, well, I'm going to go here or there. Well, don't let the boogers get you. If you're getting in the woods, don't let the boogers get you. And I always wrote that off as, they were all, my grandma also said, don't tell a lie, the booger man will get you. And so I'm thinking the booger man is what she was talking about. And so anyway, my grandpa said, there's boogers down there. And I said, they're looking at him. My dad said, you just never know what's out there. And so my grandpa was talking about bull snakes. Well, that's the same thing as a gopher snake, I found out. And they're kind of crazy snakes. They act like rattlesnakes. They shake their tail and they hiss and all that. But he said, we used to hear something, and people tell us, it's just those old bull snakes. So they bellow like a bull. And so it made me want to find out about bull snakes. Well, I found out that bull snakes don't bellow like a bull. And so now, since I have some knowledge about realities of what's really in the woods, I wonder if they weren't experiencing some cryptid vocalizations in those days. And so he also, they moved into Missouri, which was still along the St. Francis River. And he grew into manhood living in the bottoms there, out from Campbell, Missouri. Well, he had an experience. He said, I don't know what I saw, but he said it was the biggest wolf I ever saw. And he began to tell us about it. And he said, we'd still hear the old bull snakes. And he said, I never knew if that was connected or what. Well, my grandpa, he liked to embellish some things. I thought, well, okay, maybe this is one of his times he's making the story more interesting. And so as time went along, I'd ask him some different things. And his mother was a Quapaw, full-blooded Quapaw Indian. And he said, my mama told me about a lot of stuff. And he said, if you go to the woods, just be careful. He said, if you if you go out in the woods, even squirrel hunting, he said, be careful. So anyway, my head's full of all this stuff, and I'm struggling with it because since 1967, I've been convinced there's something in the Northeast, but in the Northwest, but nobody's told me that it could be right where I live. And so anyway, time passed. We moved back into Missouri, and my folks were getting older, so I was kind of watching after them. And it would have been somewhere around 1993, 94. I got all this stuff in my head, and it can't be real because people say it's not real. Even my education told me that there are strong figments of people's imagination, but the thing I could never figure out is why so many people have the same imagination. So anyway, my dad contracted cancer. He was still doing rather well. And I went by one day and he said, you got a minute? I want to tell you something. And I said, sure. Now, my dad was one of the most truthful people. He, as far as I know, he never told me a lie. He was a man of character. And he said, I want to tell you what happened to me one time. He said, you were still a baby. And in those days, we're talking early 50s. He was quite a hunter, and he helped to feed his family on game that he brought in. And so he went squirrel hunting, rabbit hunting, something. Drove his truck down to those same bottoms out from Campbell on the St. Francis River. And he said, I walked down this field road and started into the woods. And he said, I saw something ahead of me. And he said, it wasn't really good daylight yet. And he said, I just saw something move. And he said, I took a few more steps. And he said, it moved its head. And he said it had a really big head. And he said it had ears that stood up. And he said, oh, I don't know if that's a dog or if I found a wolf or if it's a coyote or what. So he said he took a couple of more steps. And this is the thing that's burned into my memory. He said, and then it stood up. And the hair on my arms is standing up right now. And he said, I could see its eyes. He said it had teeth. And he said it was almost as tall as me. And my dad, I think, was 6'1". So he said, I stopped. He said, I started to walk backwards and he said, I kept my eyes on it until I got to a point that I thought, well, maybe it can't catch me. And so he said, I didn't want to run. He said, I walked as fast as I could and got back to the truck. He said, I never looked back. He said, I started the truck and drove home. And he said, I've never told anybody about this. You're the first person I've ever told. He said, I'm afraid people will tell me I'm crazy and believe that. And my dad was, he was a construction superintendent. they built hospitals and all of this. He said, I never wanted to be branded as somebody who's crazy, and he said I might lose my job. But after he told me that, I began to put together all of the things that had happened, and just really began to wonder. And I thought, man, if these things are real, I want to see something. I want to see something definitive, but still, the old thing of where are the bones, where are the bodies, where are all of these things? And I live in Florida now. And so after I moved here, I began to get hold of some YouTube stuff, and some of the stuff about Ohio and some of those things just really began to make an impression on me. And I began to read what I could, and I saw that people were experiencing the same things I experienced all over. And I began to see that it most likely is a reality. It wasn't long ago, my wife and I went to an Indian powwow. It was an intertribal thing, and she had never been to one. I'd only been to one myself. And so we went in, and I have a shirt that says Bigfoot, the world hide and seek champion. And I was wearing that shirt that day, and one fellow said, hey, what do you think about Bigfoot? I said, well, seemed to be some reality there. And I said, I'm not sure what all the forms are and everything else, but I said, it looks like there's something real. He said, I think they're a Neanderthal that got caught up in an evolution. And I said, I'm not sure what you're talking about, but that's entirely plausible. Then another fellow, he wasn't 20 feet from where this guy was. He said, my wife and I, we believe something. He said, I'm not sure what to believe, but we believe something. And so, the whole thing is getting more and more widespread. And my mind's a whole lot more at peace now with putting together these things. And I'm talking over, 40 years, 45 years of all of the things, the input that has come into my being. And it's just one of those evolving things, I guess, in my mind that says, hey, we're a hold of something here. So anyway, that's a compressed time, Miguel, of what I've experienced. And if you allow it, I believe that there's some reality that may come about. Now, my wife and I are looking at moving to Tennessee or Alabama, one or the other. And this whole thing is may come full circle, because I've been doing some research into sightings and different things in that very area, and just south of Land Between the Lakes. And I know a lot of stuff goes on there. But that's Randy's story, and he's sticking to it.
All right, Randy, I appreciate you so much for sharing your experiences and the encounters with me. When you were hunting in Van Buren, Missouri, was this close to Big Tree? I don't know if you're familiar with the area.
Big Tree. No, I'm not familiar with that. I know that where I hunted was At one of the corner posts of the fence, which would have been the northwest corner of Big Spring Park.
Yeah, that's the same area. Big Spring,
Yeah,
Big Tree
right,
Campground, and the Ozark National Scenic
right.
Riverway is right there by the Mark
Yeah,
Twain National Forest.
yes, absolutely. If you go 60 Highway west of Van Buren, you come to C Highway, and it was off C.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I've had people on the show in the past that have had encounters out there. And I mean, it definitely looks like a squatchy area. Like you said, it's vast forests
Oh,
out
yeah.
there. There's been missing people reports, cryptid creature encounters, and strange unsolved mysteries that have been taking place there for many years. And the current river has had a long history of Bigfoot reports. When you witness this creature walking around, did you notice any features on it that really stood out?
The terrain dropped off to away from me, and this little pond had a berm around it, and so he was obscured by that. Head and shoulders was about all I saw, and the thing of it is looking like a head net, and it was dark. The head area was dark, but it made it appear conical. That's all I could really see. And so if you can imagine just seeing that much and knowing that the terrain drops off, I couldn't see how tall or anything else, but I could see him above this berm. And he wasn't struggling to get along, wasn't, getting caught up in limbs and vines and things. He moved really pretty smoothly and quickly. But as far as features, I really couldn't see it. It was still, fairly dark, but he would have been coming from a thick area going into an area that had been logged. So, the whole thing was, and I just thought, this is odd because he never came out. He had all I could see was a head, no eyes, no nose, no anything that I could see, and he was coming from a heavily forested area through this, beside this thicket, and going into a more open area, and so I would take it that he had to be pretty large and muscular, not to get caught up in the brush and such as that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first red flag that you had was it sounded like someone was chopping wood. I experienced this a handful of times in the past, and it just sounds like somebody's hacking away on a tree with an axe or like a Louisville slugger. What were your thoughts in those moments? You thought somebody else was in the woods with you, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and I would say at least 100 yards away from the sound of it, and looking back, and what I have heard in recordings as far as wood knocks, that's exactly what it sounded like. But the only reference point I had was somebody's chopping wood, and why are they doing it at 4:30 in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely. And the vocalization that you heard, can you compare it to any known animal or anything that you've ever heard before?
Uh, no, the thing of it is, it was like a roar. When you go to the zoo and you hear a lion on the other side of the zoo, cut loose with a roar, maybe something like that. But Nothing that I really could put my finger on as being just closely similar.
Yeah. And the vocalization echo through the forest, you definitely know it wasn't any known animal that should be there.
Right. See, that's not the first. That was the first that I'd heard, but it's not the only thing I've heard around Van Buren. It just came to mind. We were camping at the Watercress campground on Current River, and it's within the city limits of Van Buren. And my son and I were sitting at a campfire there. And upstream, I don't know how far, there, we were sitting there, everything was quiet, and all of a sudden, I hear this same kind of sound. And it went on for, I'm going to guess 10 seconds. I mean, it just, I didn't think it was going to stop. And it started low and got loud and higher pitched and then tapered off. And I thought, my goodness. And I looked at Matt and he's looking at me and he said, I think he was about 11. He said, what was that, Dad? I said, I think that's somebody that just had way too much to drink and got too much time on their hands. and looking back, I think, how in the world would somebody have that kind of lung capacity? It has to be something vastly different than what we have reference to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not too far away from where you encountered this thing when you were hunting. A year later, you found tracks in the area, and did they resemble like Bigfoot tracks that you've seen before, like on TV or on the internet?
It was like they were trampled. It's like something got mired in the mud and such as that. But I could tell that the spacing, like from front to back, seemed to be long. It was there was nothing distinct in that. It was just like holes. And if you've ever walked in gumbo, when you take a step, it doesn't make a shoe print. It's just a hole, and you're lucky to keep your boot on. And that's the way this looked. That something had really been mired up. I didn't see anything distinctive as far as toes or instep or the arch or anything like that. Heel.
Yeah. And what were your thoughts in that moment when you witnessed this huge creature walking through the woods? Did you feel afraid? Did you want to get out of there, or did you think maybe it was just one of your friends?
I just thought it was another hunter. And when something happens like that, so much of the time, you don't really think about it. And then later on, you think about it. Where was this guy going? He was going into the thickest part of the forest in that area. And if he didn't come out to the road. And so the more I thought about it, the more I thought it was like less of a hunter and more of something, that I couldn't explain.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were watching the turkeys that were flocked up in the tree by Greenville, Missouri, off the St. Francis River, it seems like these turkeys knew exactly what was vocalizing, and perhaps the Sasquatch had been taking turkey out of those flocks for food.
That's what I thought, because usually turkeys will just fly down out of the tree.
Mm-hmm.
But these, let's see, where I was sitting was 20 yards from the edge of the water, let's say. They were probably about 15 feet behind me in the tree. And I had turkey hunted there, and I know I've seen them come off the roost in that area, and they just fly down and then kind of get their bearings of what they're going to do, or they'll start feeding immediately. And it's like they didn't want to come down. They weren't going to do that. And they just waited and waited. And finally, they didn't touch down until they got, I'm going to say 30, 40 feet on the other side of the river. They flew in the air across there. So I would say that they knew what the score was, and they had to do what was out of the ordinary for them. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if the creature had gotten a few lunches out of those turkeys.
Yeah, absolutely. They're no stranger to Bigfoot. And when you moved to Pike County, Missouri, the locals were talking about the legendary Missouri monster. And later on, when you went hunting, you encountered yet again another creature that was moving through the thicket, and it hid behind a hay bale and was kind of peeking out and repeating the pattern back and forth. Did you notice anything that really stood out on that creature that said it wasn't human?
I could tell it was not human. The thing that got me was, I believe from the way that I saw it, it was on all fours when it came from the thicket up to the hay bales. And if it were on all fours or crouched over, its back was more than 5 feet tall, above the bales, because the bales are just right at 5 feet. And then I could not see eyes, couldn't see anything else. But the primary feature, looking back, I thought it was an animal with its snout sticking out. I think actually that might have been the top of its head, because it was conical, and of course I didn't think anything about it then, but with what I've seen and what people describe, I think that would have been it. Maybe on all fours and just looking out, probably in my direction, head first, looking down the side of the hay bale.
Yeah, absolutely. A creature the size of an elk moving on all fours, displaying odd behavior is definitely not human. And do you remember the color of the creature?
Dark, very dark.
Okay. And what do you think it was up to?
Maybe it was as curious about me as what I was about it. But the thing of it is, and my habit was to take a break and throw some leftover sandwich out, and maybe he would have been going for that. The gifting, when I really began to think about that, I thought, evidently they like what I was giving them, and they thought I was giving them something, and maybe that was it. Where I parked every time, the car could be seen across that field. It wasn't obscured in that regard and in that area. So who knows? It could have been the treat he was looking for. It could have been that he knew exactly where I was and was just trying to see what I was going to be doing. That was during gun season.
Wow. Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
excellent theory, and I didn't think of that. Maybe this creature had been around all along, and you were throwing out the scraps from the breakfast sandwiches, and when you were out there in the field, it was kind of circling you to see if maybe you were going to throw out some food. He's like, man, I know this guy, and he usually tosses us some food.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's entirely possible. And the thing of it is, why did this suddenly back up on me? Okay, maybe we're friends at first, and all of a sudden, maybe I had not come often enough for him, or maybe I wasn't leaving the scraps like I had before, or something,
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly I was unwelcome. So I think all of that probably fits together.
Absolutely. And they left you a rock on the hood of your vehicle, letting you know that they've been watching you. And maybe that was a token of their gratitude.
I have read a lot about the gifting, and a lot of times I think they are doing some things in exchange.
Yeah, I think so too. The Native Americans talked about trading with these creatures, and I don't think it was so much in the sense of them coming up and they're trading like mushrooms and deer meat, and the Sasquatch are giving them something. I think they're referring to gifting.
Right, right. Yeah. And with the thing in Mississippi, these where the structure was, I think it was the same sort of thing, because these were not ordinary rocks. I used to kid about it. I said, I come from Missouri, where we have these huge outcropping of rocks. In Mississippi, the biggest rock you find, you can put in your pocket. And I found those size rocks, but they were decorative, as opposed to just a gray rock. They were special. They might have been a fossil or something like that. So I think all of that fits together with things that may impress them.
No, yeah, absolutely. And when I was referring to the Native Americans gifting with them, I kind of picture in my mind, like when they get out of their teepees in the morning, or whenever they woke up, there would be like a deer right there in camp, and they would perhaps leave items out in the woods for these things. So it wasn't like direct gifting, but the same activity that we experience today. And yeah,
Right.
yeah, the rocks in a circle, that definitely lines up with Bigfoot activity, the tree breaks, the teepee structures, and the voice in your head, that's terrifying. This thing telling you to get out of the area and that it's going to take your life. That's frightening. And you mustered up the courage to push through the forest to go hunting because you didn't want this to ruin the area for you. I can't imagine how you felt when you were walking through there and the dread that overcame you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime I think about it, the hair on my arm still stands up after all these years. But I really had to talk to my feet and tell them to move. That's how terrifying it was. But I said, I'm not going to let this overcome me, and because at that time, I was looking at it as spiritual rather than material. And then looking back, I can see that it was very much material. And so it's kind of a huge reversal inside of my being of really how everything stacks up in regard to these creatures.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I see it as physical evidence and spiritual, and a lot of people have talked about the telepathic messages that they've received from the Sasquatch, and it blows my mind, and it makes me wonder of their true origins and what they're truly capable of.
Right, right. I I look back on it. It makes me wonder if are they capable of harm. It's a fearsome thing, but if it wanted to kill me, it would have.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure they can. I mean, they can rip trees out of the ground, and there's a lot of people that have went missing. Maybe the fact that you pushed through it, it made them second guess themselves, and they didn't want to mess with you. I know your dog wants to go outside. I can hear him whining, but I have one more question, or one more thing that I want to bring up. Your father encountered a werewolf creature. He said it had pointy ears and it stood up, and this happened in Missouri off the St. Francis River, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and this is in the Mark Twain National Forest.
No, this was. Did you say it was not in it, or it was?
It was, correct? Because that area
no.
Okay.
It was. It was near Campbell, Missouri, which is in Dunklin County, in the Boot Heel.
Okay, but still close to the Mark Twain.
St. Francis, in the bottoms of the St. Francis, where it borders Arkansas.
Oh, okay. Well, I've had reports off the St. Francis River of Bigfoot and Dogman and people encountering the same thing. So I definitely believe your father. And the fact that he waited to tell you after he got cancer just makes it that much more believable. You can tell that he had been holding on to that for a long time, and he wanted to share something really important that he truly experienced with you.
Right. He said it was when I was a baby, and so when he told me, I was 40, probably about 45. So he had been hanging on to it for a long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Do you have anything else that you would like to share? Anything else that you can remember? Anything that anyone else told you?
There was one incident of a fellow, and he said, "I'm not going to tell you everything." This guy was in Bowling Green, but there's an area off of 79 highway, between 79 and 61, that is they call it, I think they call it Little Africa or something like that, but it's really, really dense. He said he got up there, got lost, and had to spend the night in the woods. And he said, "I'll never go in there again." He said, "They talk about MOMO." He said, I think that's too good of a name. And he said, "That's all I want to tell you." But he said, "If you ever go in there, be very careful." And that brought back my grandpa's thing of, watch out for the boogers. That was his thing. Watch out for the boogers. They'll get you in the woods. And when this fellow was telling me, I said, "Oh, sounds like the boogers that my grandpa was talking about." So anyway, he was a believer, and evidently he experienced something that was really scary. He said, I don't want to even talk about it, but he said, be careful in that area if you ever hunt there.
Yeah, absolutely. I've also had a guy on from Pike County, pretty close to Troy, Missouri, and he had some serious Bigfoot encounters that took place on his farm. So it can't be too far away from where you had your experiences at.
Right. My experience was north of Highway 54 and east of Highway 61. Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate you for being very transparent with the details, and it really builds up a better report. A lot of people hold back on the details, the location. Some people don't even want to mention the state, and definitely not their name. So you being open with all this definitely helps out a lot more with people who are experiencing the same thing in those particular areas. And it helps other people open up and share their own experiences.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's been such a long trek for me. If I can make it easier for someone to understand part of it and give some credibility, I want to do that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it also helps out with people who are trying to find answers. And it's not helping anyone if people aren't sharing the locations, because people go and venture in these areas, whether they're hunting, fishing, or camping. They take their kids there. And I feel like people need to know, because a lot of people, they don't think these things exist, that it's not actually happening, but it is. And people run into these things, and without having prior information, it really flips their world upside down.
Right. Yeah. And, when I started really doing some study on this, I all of this started to gel together in my mind, and I thought, hey, Sasquatch has been standing out here saying, "Here I am, here I am, here I am." What are you going to believe?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I completely understand where you're coming from as far as not putting all the clues together and knowing exactly what it was. Back then, there wasn't that much information regarding the subject. And nowadays, there's all these stories, podcasts, books, movies, and people are able to quickly pinpoint exactly what's going on. But back then, it was hard to say what truly was happening. And I experienced the same thing. I had many experiences scattered throughout my life, and I always just thought it was mountain lions or homeless people out in the woods, or maybe like spiritual activity, like there's ghosts out there in the forest. But once I put a finger on what was going on, a light bulb clicked in my mind, and I can see how everything unfolded for you and where you were able to find clarity with the experiences that you had.
Right. And when you hit the light bulb moment, then things really, it seems like everything accelerates, and then you start to remember other things. I sat down and before we talked this time, and tried to put together all my thoughts, and just driving down the road, I will think of something else, because everything starts to fall together then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like all the areas that you've moved to in the past just happen to have Bigfoot activity. And I know there's Sasquatch areas because I've had people on the show from those particular spots in North America. So you just happen to bounce around encrypted areas unknowingly.
Well, I don't know. It's almost like sometimes I've looked at it and I think we don't choose them, they choose us.
Oh, yeah.
Who's receptive here? And I don't know. It seems like once you begin to see some things, you see a lot more. Now, it may be that all of that's presented to everybody. I don't know. But it's almost like those experiences have followed me everywhere I've been.
Yeah, that was the exact impression that I had as you were telling your experiences, that you were either marked, tagged, or chosen by these creatures. And it could be a spiritual thing, it could be a chemical that your body puts off, a frequency, or they just like you. It's really hard to say, but I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I've experienced the same thing myself.
Right. Well, I was a beekeeper when I was still living in Missouri, and bees are uncanny in that one bee can map your face, and they more or less mark you, and within a couple of days, every bee in the colony knows you. Now, how that works, nobody knows. But if you're marked as a good pheromone, they all mark you as a good pheromone.
Absolutely. I've discussed that in the past on the channel, that perhaps the Sasquatch have a hive mind and they're able to find you no matter where you go.
Right. Could be. And I know a lot of people talk about portals, and it would be an interesting thing if it was the same guy following you around too.
Yeah, I've thought about that myself. Maybe these things are utilizing portals. Did you ever experience anything strange out there in the woods as far as orbs, the sounds of like metal doors slamming shut, any weird energy anomalies?
No, that is, and I've thought about that, and I've thought back because I know that there are accounts where there was a light, there was an orb, there was this, that accompanied Bigfoot activity. And no, I didn't have anything like that. One of my guys that I hunted with said that he said, man, he said, they always talk about foxfire. He said, I think I saw that, or swamp gas or something. But it was, it was just kind of like business as usual until I would have something that would come along. I'll tell you something else too. It just came to mind. In near Van Buren, I used to hear it sounded like a cackle almost, and there was one of the guys I hunted with. I said, "You hear this thing? Sounds like some kind of weird bird." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Guy told me that's a wood hen." And it sounded like a whole lot like a woodpecker. I don't know if you've experienced that or not, but they have a kind of a cackle that they do. And but this was deeper. And I said, "Well, what is a wood hen?" "Well, I don't know." Well, I did research, and I couldn't find a wood hen anywhere. So I wonder if maybe that wasn't a vocalization.
Yeah, very well could have been. And like I said before, the Van Buren area is a spooky area. And it gives me the feeling that I had when I was in Alaska, just like so quiet, you can hear a pin drop. Like the barometric pressure is really high and you can feel all the hairs on your body standing up like something's watching you. Maybe it's just because it's big woods, but there's definitely a feeling out there. And like I said, a lot of people have made reports from that area in the past. And yeah, if I researched there, I wouldn't even know where to begin. It's huge woods and you could easily get lost.
Right. It's well, I have been lost, but not to the extent of taking more than like half a day. I remember getting on a trail and I thought it was going somewhere else, and really got turned around. Didn't take long to get that way either, and it took a lot longer to find my way out. But I told you about the big tree that was laying down where the eerie feeling was. I just happened to think there was a cave up the ridge from that thing. I don't know if Bigfoot lives in a cave or can stay in a cave or whatever. But all of that really bothered me in that it all fit together to be just a really spooky experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the guy said that I interviewed in the past from Van Buren. The area that he was hunting at was by Big Cave or Big Springs, and he said there was a cave up on the hill and like these food plots. Maybe it's the same area.
Could be. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very possible. All right, Randy.
But,
Oh,
Okay, man.
No, go ahead. Finish what you were going to say.
Oh, I was just going to say I never did experience the smell either of anything. It was, if I smelled anything like rotting flesh, I usually found the carcass, and it would be a deer or something in the woods, a wandering cow or something. But that's one of those things that it's kind of pleasant that I didn't experience that.
No, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, you did an excellent job at sharing your experiences here on Sasquatch Theory. I know your dog has hit the point of no return, and I appreciate his patience.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, Clancy is quite a dog.
Yeah, he sounds like it. And hopefully we can meet up in the future. If you're in Missouri again, let me know, and we will meet up and talk about everything.
We usually come up on a holiday, so we'll be in the St. Charles area, no doubt.
Okay, we'll keep in touch, and I look forward to meeting you in person.
All right, man.
All right, you take care.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
You too.
Thank you so much for listening to Sasquatch Theory, and those were absolutely some incredible experiences and encounters, and it amazes me how people have these encounters throughout their life, and they're just not able to put a finger on exactly what's going on. And back then there wasn't as much information about these things as there is today. Randy's life is a reminder that some people don't just have an encounter, they live with the unknown following them from place to place. From Missouri to Mississippi, whatever these beings are, they leave signs, they leave tracks, and sometimes they leave warnings. If you've had an encounter of your own, please reach out and share your story with me. Your experience might help someone else understand what they've seen out there in the dark timber. Until the next time, keep your eyes open, your senses sharp, and remember, the woods doesn't always belong to us.